1975, Toms River, New Jersey. A man named Don Miller is selling a 34-foot trawler for $25,000. Teak decks, a parquet cabin sole, curtains already hanging in the windows. He does not own the yard that builds her. He does not own the mold. He does not own the drawings. And the tricks that put that boat in the water are banned in every serious yard on Earth today. Teak planks screwed straight down through the deck laminate into a plywood subdeck, thousands of holes drilled on purpose into the one surface that has to keep water out. On some of those boats, half the screws are simply not there. Nobody bought Marine Trader, no corporation swallowed it, no fund stripped it. Marine Trader never built a single boat, and the decision that killed her is a thing Don Miller never bought. He sells boats for a living. That is the whole of it. Miller Yacht Sales, Toms River, New Jersey, a dealer's lot on the Jersey Shore, and by 1968, he is looking for something he can put in front of a school teacher and a retired machinist. American yards cannot give it to him. In 1968, a proper wooden cruiser is a rich man's object, and the fiberglass boats that can undercut it are still small. So he gets on a plane and goes to Taiwan. What he finds there is labor, and a great deal of it, small yards, family shops. Men who can hand carve a cabin door and lay up a hull the same week. Miller commissions a 34-foot aft-cabin cruiser drawn by the American naval architect Ed Monk, and he starts shipping them home. If you were walking a boat show in 1976, you remember exactly what that boat did to a room. The smell of fresh varnish coming off the rails, carved teak on doors nobody expected to be carved. A saloon with real wood underfoot instead of molded plastic, in a boat priced like a station wagon and a half. People bought them the way people buy a thing they have been quietly wanting for 10 years. Marine Trading International is on the books from the 30th of October, 1972. The 34 double cabin goes into build the same year, and it does not stop until 2001. 29 model years on one set of lines. Behind it comes the 34 sedan, the 36 double cabin, the 40 double cabin, the 40 Europa, the 49 pilot house, then the 40 sun deck, the 38 double cabin, the LaBelle 40, the 50 motor yacht. Around 20 models, and not one of them made in a building Miller owns. And here is the thing the internet keeps getting wrong about these boats. The hulls were good, hand-laid, heavily overbuilt, drowned in resin, by men who had no reason to be shy with it, which is exactly why so few of them blister. Nobody in that shed was costing out grams of resin per square meter. They put it on until it looked right. 50 years later, surveyors still hammer those hulls and find them sound. The hull was never the problem. Underneath, a single Ford Lehman 120, or less often a Perkins 6354. 6 to 8 knots all day on about a liter a mile, no computer anywhere near it. And according to the men who rebuilt them for a living, a Lehman that has been looked after will run 20,000 hours before the block needs opening. A full keel with the propeller tucked up behind it, so you can find the bottom in a strange creek and back yourself off it before dinner. That is a boat built to be owned, not financed. By the year 2000, Don Miller has brought over 3,000 boats into the United States, more than any other importer in the country, in any category ever. Not the best boats, and he said so himself, freely, for 30 years. The best value. Everything I just told you about that hull, about that engine, about what a long keel forgives, is the kind of thing this channel exists for. If you have ever owned a boat that owed you nothing, one you paid off and fixed yourself and trusted a long way from home, subscribe and put her name in a comment with where you are watching from. Half of what gets made here starts in those replies, because the next part is where it all comes apart, and it happens in a boatyard in about 10 minutes on a Tuesday. Miller is in Taiwan, standing in the shed, going over a boat with the yardmen. He is a dealer with 20 years of customer complaints in his head, and he knows precisely what is wrong with the design. So he orders changes, 23 of them, not cosmetic ones. The kind of list you only get from a man who has stood in his own showroom for 2 decades listening to owners tell him where the hatch should have gone, and how the engine box comes apart, and what a locker door does in a seaway. He pays for them, he signs for them, he gets on a plane home. 2 weeks later, he opens a magazine in New Jersey. Other importers are advertising the same 23 changes, not similar changes. The same ones. His list? on their boats, under their names, at their prices, sold by their dealers 2 weeks after he wrote it. That is the mistake. And it is not a design decision, and it is not an engine, and it is not a hull. Don Miller never owned the factory. He never owned a mold. He never owned a drawing. He was a customer at yards that were free to sell everything he taught them to the man who walked in behind him. Every dollar he spent making a marine trader better made every competing trawler better for nothing inside a fortnight. He was not running a boat company. He was running an unpaid research department for his own competition, and he ran it for 30 years. And you can see it in the water right now. Go and stand in any marina on the Chesapeake or the Salish Sea and look along the docks. That same hull is wearing a dozen different badges: Albin, CHB, Cheermen, C&L, Hershine, La Paz, North Sea, Puget Trawler, Universal. Same lines, same shear, same trunk cabin, different decal on the transom. This is the part that still gets me. There was never a marine trader factory to visit. There was a central yard popping hulls, and then those hulls went out to family businesses scattered around the island for finishing, and whatever came back is what you got. So one boat has dragons carved into every interior door and wall panels that do not meet in the corners. The next one has a beautifully joined head and windows that leak from the first rain. A third has an instrument panel a Swiss watchmaker would sign, and wiring behind it that no American electrician will touch without a drink first. Now the tricks. Teak decking, on everything built before about 1985, laid in strips over a plywood subdeck and fastened down with bronze screws driven through the fiberglass. Every screw is a hole. Every hole is bedded in compound that has a service life of about 15 years, and the boat is 50. Water gets under the teak, and it does not sit still. It runs downhill to the lowest point of the deck, roughly 2/3 of the way aft, and it pools there, and it goes looking for a screw hole. It finds one. The plywood underneath turns to porridge, and the first the owner knows about it is a soft spot underfoot on a Sunday. Then there is the sweeping. On some boats, the fiberglass deck was never swept clean before the teak went down, so the planks were laid over grit and offcuts. The deck came out lumpy. The fix in the yard was to plane the teak flat afterwards, which leaves you a deck that is thick in some places and paper thin in others, and no way to know which is which until you are on your knees with a scraper. And the screws. Strip an old deck and count them. Owners keep finding half of them missing. A screw not used was a spare screw for the next boat, under the sole mild steel fuel tanks, black iron, welded, glassed in, and boxed over so tightly that on many boats you cannot remove one without cutting the furniture out. The hull works in a seaway, the tank works with it, and eventually it splits at a welded corner and puts 40-year-old diesel in your bilge. And one more that hides better than all of them. Pour resin wet out in the cabin sides. It shows as spider webbing in the gel coat and little chips that open onto dry chopped mat underneath, and the thickness of those walls varies wildly from boat to boat. Some of them are massively built, some are close to paper. 2 boats off the same mold, tied up in the same row of the same marina, and you can only tell them apart by pulling the shore power fitting out of the wall and looking at the cut edge. None of that is a design failure. Every one of it is what happens when the name on the transom is the only part of the boat the man selling it actually controls. By 1981, the industry cleans itself up. Quality control tightens across Taiwan, the horror stories thin out, and the boats built from about 82 onward are a different proposition. That should have been the moment Marine Trader pulled ahead. It could not. The improvement belonged to the yards, and the yards served everyone. Other men standing in those same sheds worked it out and moved. Alexander Chu leaves C&L and starts Ocean. Alexander with a 50-foot pilot house at $125,000, and Ocean Alexander is still building yachts today at $1 million and up. Sinclair Wen, who runs the Chunghua yard, buys into the Katie Krogan line, and that 42-foot design has been in continuous production for more than 40 years. Both of those men ended up owning something. Miller kept placing orders. So the lines start going dark, quietly, one model at a time. The 40 double cabin stops in 1985. The 49 pilot house stops in 83. The 36 double cabin and the 36 sedan run out in 93. The 47 Tradewinds ends in 95, the same year the sailboats stop for good. The work moves too. Labor gets cheaper across the strait in mainland China, the yards follow it, and the men who carve those doors retire in a country that has stopped building that kind of boat. Donald Miller dies on the 30th of November 2012 in Toms River, at home, known everywhere in the trade as the man who brought the trawler to America. Marine Trading International is finally struck off on the 10th of June 2019. 47 years of trading, 3,000 boats, and not 1 square foot of factory floor to hand to anybody. Which means that today there is nobody to call. No parts counter, no hull number archive. No man in an office who can tell you which shop on which side of the island laid up your boat in 1979, or what he used for core in the foredeck. What there is instead is other owners on forums photographing their own bilges for strangers. That is the entire support network for this fleet, and it has now held longer than the company did. The boats did not care. As I record this, in August 2026, there are 17 Marine Trader trawlers listed on Yacht World. A 1977 Down East in Lacombe, Louisiana at $29,000. A 1978 40-footer in San Diego at $49,000. A 1987 36 in New Bedford, Massachusetts at $49,500. A 1983 40 double cabin in Deltaville, Virginia at $65,000. A 1981 trunk cabin in Long Beach, California at $39,900. Every one of those links is in the description. A new 36-foot trawler today starts around $500,000. These stopped depreciating before most of the people watching this retired. If you are looking at one, here is the order I would work in. Walk the deck first, aft of the saloon door, at that low point 2/3 of the way back, and feel for the give. Then get into the engine room and look up at the underside of that same deck for staining. Have the surveyor moisture meter the 4 stringers running fore and aft inside the hull, because if bilge water has been sitting in a drilled stringer for 20 years, the hull flexes, and everything bolted to it flexes with it. Pull the shore power fitting out of the cabin side and look at the cross-section of the wall, which is the cheapest way there is to find out whether you are looking at a thick boat or a thin one, and find the fuel tanks with your hands, not your eyes. 2 things people forget until the money is committed. Insurance. Plenty of underwriters will not quote a 50-year-old wooden-decked trawler at all, and some marinas will not take one on a long-term slip, so you get the quote before you get the survey, not after. And the running cost. 10% of value a year is the number this fleet actually costs, and on a $65,000 boat, that is $6,500 before you have gone anywhere. My own money goes on a hull built from 1982 onward, with the teak already off the decks and glassed over properly by somebody competent, and I would happily pay $10,000 more for that boat than for a prettier one with the original planks still down. Because the teak is the part that dies. The hull is the part that does not. That is the strange shape of this story. Every mocking thing ever said about Taiwan trawlers is aimed at the finish. And the finish is exactly the part that was never Marine Traders to control. The part Don Miller actually chose, a heavy hand-laid hull, a slow, honest diesel, a keel you can run aground on, is the part still floating. He built a name and rented everything underneath it. The name is gone, the boats are in the coves, American yards spent that whole decade calling them Taiwan Tupperware and Eastern junk. 50 years on, the part they were laughing at is the part still holding water. Somewhere in the Pacific Northwest this morning, a man is standing on a 50-year-old teak deck with a coffee on a boat built by a company that no longer exists, in a yard whose name he does not know, and she has not let him down yet. There is one more version of this story, and it is the exact opposite of Don Miller's. Hobie Alter owned everything, the shapes, the molds, the factory, the name, and he lost the company anyway, with one decision that looked like the sensible move at the time. Same years, same market, opposite mistake, and you cannot see the whole picture with only one of them. The tragic fall of Hobie Alter is on the screen right now. Click it, and I will see you in there.